We're drifting into this view that people are a kind of a smear on the environment, that animals have this idyllic existence until we come along and spoil them. And this forgets something. Humans are the center of his story. Humans' lives are the most important thing that he has moved to save. Truth in 10-ish, in 3, 2, 1. Human beings were made to rule the world. Why do I say that? Well, because of Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. It says, "Fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." So it's tied up with this position that we're given, described here as dominion. And that doesn't mean that we're all made to be kings and warlords and power-mongering despots and self-interested striving for power. Power is a big theme today. Let's not get this wrong. It's more nuanced than that. And to work it all out, I want to make a few observations from 3 angles, actually. And the first angle is this. It is that here we see quite clearly, and in the other places this is repeated, that human beings have a legitimate authority over creation. In the ranking of created things sort of outside the heavenly realm, humans are number 1, and other created things are number 2. And it's not that either is unimportant, it's just that there is an order. And that is important in our modern world, just that simple fact, because we live in days when there is a great lament going up concerning the dominion that people do have over creation and the subjugation of creation at our hands. And note that dominion and subdue are both there in Genesis 1:28. That is, in fact, the correct order, that human beings would be in that position. The correct order is not the other way around. It's not the case that other created things ought to be venerated above humans. It's not that we should make ourselves subject to them in order to save them. That's backwards. We're drifting into this view that people are a kind of a smear on the environment, that animals have this idyllic existence until we come along and spoil them, that we're a cancer, we are the cancer that will kill the system. And this forgets something. It forgets that when it comes to the things God created on earth, it forgets that humans are the center of his story. Humans' lives are the most important thing that he has moved to save. People are given, the focus of the creation account is actually just one example, and Genesis 1-2 explains this, particularly in detail in the way that humans are set over creation, and creation is there to provide for us. Look at, for example, plants are given to us to eat in Genesis 1:29. Flowing water is there to drink in 2 verse 10. Gold and precious stones are provided in the ground in 2 verse 12. And the dominion that we have over animals in 1 verse 28 becomes a provision of those animals for food in 9 verse 3. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating for recklessness and pillaging and excess. I don't understand the attitude that wiped out entire species through hunting. I don't understand the attitude that doesn't admire and enjoy nature and look for parts to preserve. I don't understand the attitude that doesn't want to be as clean as practicable. And there is enough in Genesis 2 to suggest that that kind of excess is not right. But I am saying in all of that, let's not forget the basic order. A creation that provides and a humanity that rules and consumes. In themselves, those things are not wrong. And whenever it comes down to one or the other, humans are first. God has ordered history for the salvation of human lives for his glory, and he will liberate the creation from its trouble in Romans 8. But in the meantime, he is saving human souls, and human life is that paramount important thing. We may worry, I guess, about the planet, whether it's up to the task of providing for so many people as we have today, especially amidst our very patchy efforts to be conscientious. But we can take confidence in this much. We won't be the cancer that kills the system. The system is on God's timeline, not our timeline. And I think that is demonstrated, and we'll deal with this in a future segment in more detail. Genesis 8:22, God says, "While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease." In other words, he'll deal with all of those things in his time. That's the first and probably the biggest angle. The second angle is this. I just want to notice something, that this implies and demonstrates very clearly that in a perfect world before the fall, God established authority. And so it's very important for us to know that authority is not wrong. God means it to exist in the world. And we just read where God has given authority over the created things to the human race. But then we see as Scripture unfolds, and even as Genesis 1 to 3 unfolds, there's other ways in which God has invested authority in human beings for the ordering of this world, for the good ordering of this world. And examples in the Bible would include, say, families, churches, governments. And that is why there's also this virtue in Scripture called submission, because when we do that, we honor the good authorities that God has established in the world for its order. When we submit to them, and obviously no submission is absolute except our submission to God, but submission is nonetheless an important virtue to honor those authorities. So authority is right and it's proper where God has established it, because a world without authority is a world of anarchy, a world that's completely out of control, and that's actually far worse even than deficient authority, if you think about it. But we need to understand what this authority that God established really is, because today we speak a lot about power. We speak a lot about the oppression of power and all that kind of thing. And you say, well, what is a kind of authority that God invests which can be good? What's the key to it? Well, I'll use an example. It's a bit like a thing called a trust, which most people will have heard of. But when I used to work in a law firm, in one practice group in particular, we often came across trusts. And a simple example was the case of a very wealthy man. He had a lot of money, a lot of assets, and he took some of that money, he put it into one of these structures called a trust, and then he appointed somebody called a trustee, a person whose job it is to look after the money and to invest it and use it and all that kind of thing. And when you looked at that trust, and you saw that trustee doing what he was doing, you would say to yourself, wow, he's got all the authority in the world. He's able to use that money, spend that money. It seems to be his money. But see, it's not. That trustee appears to be in charge, but in reality, the law requires him to use that money only in the best interests of its true owner. He is answerable to a higher authority, and he must serve the interests of the rich guy. So it is with us. Wherever we may appear to be in charge, whatever authority we may appear to have in this world, whether it be, it looks like we are the greatest species on the planet, and it looks like governments are in charge of nations, and it looks like, and so on and so on. We have this appearance of authority, but it's very important for us to note that this is all on trust from God, the owner of all authority, to certain individuals to use for his purposes, and he will judge. So it brings me back to this point about submission, which is that good authority is only exercised insofar as the person exercising it is truly submitted to God and his will and their duty to him to use it for his interests. And wherever that happens, authority will always be good. The final angle is this. I've talked about authority, and of course, it kind of makes you uncomfortable because we know that authority is so corrupted in our present world. And we also know that the creation itself is just not really under the authority of mankind. I mean, it's not submitted. It's ultimately beyond us in a way. It is ultimately too big for us. And the climate alarmism stuff is very much based around that, to say, oh my goodness, there's forces beyond our control. What shall we do? And those authority systems that God has established, people rule for themselves and in the images of false gods. And we see so much talk today of oppression and corruption and marginalization and the wickedness of the system and all that kind of stuff. Hebrews 2 acknowledges this. It talks about the reality of this fallen world. It says, now, in putting everything in subjection to man, and it's harking back to Genesis, what we just read, that dominion mandate. In putting everything in subjection to man, God left nothing outside his control. But at present, it says, as in today, in the real world, in the fallen world, we do not yet see everything in subjection to him. It is beyond us. It is a mess. But we see him who for a little while was made lower than the angels, namely Jesus, crowned with glory and with honor. In other words, don't forget something. There is a perfect dominion. There is a perfect authority. And it's the authority described in the hymn, Jesus shall reign. Wherever the sun does its successive journeys run, his kingdom will stretch from shore to shore till suns shall rise and set no more. To our King be highest praise, rising through eternal days. Just and faithful he shall reign. Jesus shall reign. All things are to be restored to their right order in Jesus Christ. And in the meantime, there is a sense in which this quality, which the creation account has called dominion, is relevant to every single one of us because we're all humans that carry something of that in our being. It's part of our identity, to use a modern world. It plays out in this way. Whether or not we have one of these traditional authorities, like in a family or a government or whatever, the fact is that every human life has such a nature that it is a kind of a life that leaves a mark, leaves an impact, no matter how small, no matter how great, no matter whether that impact is for good or for evil. Even the most negligent and wasteful of lives leaves an impact, usually a bad one, somewhere, somehow, on someone, usually more than that. Humans are just that kind of creature. They have a sort of authority in this world which actually changes things. Do you want that authority, that imprint, that testimony to the world through you to be good? Then submit to and serve Jesus Christ, the King of Kings, whose dominion is perfect, whose reign is perfect, whose perfect and full and complete reign is just up ahead, and he will leave some mark on this world of his own through you.